In my 11 years of machining, there's one dead giveaway that I've found that tells me whether or not a machinist or a machine shop is giving me quality work. And that giveaway is deburring.
When it comes to deburring, guys, my number one tip isn't going to be a tool, it's a philosophy. I think if I know anything about Shawn, he's probably going to say something similar to the same thing.
I guess the question of the day is, what's your favorite deburr tool? I always have to keep an extra on the shelf, just to make sure that I can get done when I need. Like this one. Hey, you never know when you're gonna need one in an emergency.
But my philosophy is you don't want to introduce any more deburring off the machine than you have to. And the second you start using files or you start using deburring knives, you're introducing a level of variability to your parts that doesn't necessarily need to be there. You can have the 5 best men and women in your shop all deburr something on a belt sander, you're gonna get 5 different results. And when it comes to shipping good parts every time to a customer, consistency is gonna win every single time. So my tip is, the more you can do on a machine to get the machine as consistent as possible, the better. You wanna avoid as much hand finishing as you can. That said, if you do have to do hand finishing, you want to try to standardize things as much as you can. So make a process. If you're going to have 3 different people run the same production run, make sure one guy's not using a file, another girl is using a deburring knife, another person's using a belt sander. You want to standardize it as much as you can to try to lower that variability as much as possible. And the other nice thing about doing as much deburring in the machine as you can, it saves you time. Instead of sitting there deburring something, the part comes off the machine done, you put it aside, you reload, you move on to another machine. So that's kind of my tip for it, but you know, there's a million ways to do this.
Like this one. Hey guys, it's Shawn here from SB Solo. And I guess the question of the day is, what's your favorite deburr tool? And I would say without a doubt, it's gotta be this lollipop mill. So I have some big ones. There's a bigger one here. I think this is like a 5/32 right there. So I also have like a couple small ones that I use. See that one? I think that's about 1/8 inch or 90 thou, I can't remember. So the lollipop mills are my favorite just because you can just hit everything on a not everything on a 3-axis machine, but on a 5-axis for sure. But on a 3-axis, you can hit a lot of undercuts and not have to deal with, you know, the sharp edges, especially on a production environment. You can get pretty much done off the machine without having to hand deburr anything. You know, the last thing you want to do is put it in everybody's second favorite machine, which is a tumbler. There's a couple different things you can look out for on the lollipop mill. Is basically you use a amount of the sphere. So you can buy them in different sizes to where different diameters, but you can also get different sizes of shank. And what that does is allows you to cut like 220 degrees on the full circle, or you can go like 300 degrees or like 320. And you can do 359 degrees if you wanted to, but your shank would probably be about 2000s. Yeah, you can buy them off the shelf or, you know, custom. Doesn't really matter, however you need to do it. But let me show you a little demo here of how they kind of work. So in this particular piece, I use this guy right here. And what happens is I come in here and then I basically deburr this section underneath, you know, on every one of these holes. And I used to deburr this quite a bit, by hand. Actually, I did it all by hand before. And if you can get in there and see that, you can see, I mean, that stuff used to take me like almost 15 minutes per part because I had to deburr all this stuff. So yeah, that's a lollipop mill, my favorite deburr tool. And I always have to keep it extra on the shelf, just to make sure that I can get done what I need. Like this one. Hey, you never know when you're gonna need one in an emergency.
I've seen those things literally cut people's hands open, cut thumbs open. It's a rotor burr, it's a whirly burr, it's a knuckle-nibbler. There's so many names for this one thing. And my deburr tip is, don't use this as much as you can. Do as much as you can inside that machine. Because inside that machine, you get consistency, you get a quality. When you have to deburr outside, your employees having to deburr stuff, introduces inconsistencies, surface finish problems. They could gouge apart and scrap apart, cost money right there, or worse, bodily harm. I've seen those things literally cut people's hands open, cut thumbs open. It gets crazy. But here is the tools that I like to use inside the machine. Okay, from a single flute chamfer mill 4 flute, smaller chamfer mill being like a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch, as well as an 1/8 of an inch ball mill. I mean, for just having to use a minute of your time to deburr the part inside the machine, sometimes it's faster in the machine than it is as for a person to deburr it outside. All right, so it's actually saving you money in the long run. All right, and for like this part right here, from my display case, you can see all of these surfaces and edges were deburred in the machine. All uniform, all beautiful, exactly how you would want it to be. And it didn't take no less than a minute. I mean, it was probably even faster than a minute for how fast it went. But like this scrap part here, I didn't even deburr it in the machine. It was in process. But I'll go ahead and deburr this part to show you the differences between a hand deburr and an actual machine chamfer on a part. Using a little jeweler file. Get that burr off. And as you guys can see on that corner, even though I was just going right across it very lightly, there is so many inconsistencies between that and the uniform of this. Which would you prefer?
So if you've watched the Impractical Machinist podcast, you probably know that sometimes I take an old school approach to things. And when it comes to deburring, other than maybe throwing a rock at your part, I don't think it gets any more old school than hand files. So today, I'm going to go through the information you might need to know about hand files, the different types, the different applications, and kind of my filing technique. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of deburring in the machine, but sometimes it's just not practical. That's where hand files come in. I've got a few of mine laid out here to show you. First, let's talk file shape. To run through a few I have here, I've got flat files, round files, half round files, triangular files, and needle files. Round files are good for radiuses and rounded features. Triangular files are good for dovetails, threads, or other sharp corners that are less than 90 degrees. And needle files are good for fine work where you need light pressure, such as on small parts or parts that have very minimal burrs. There's also different tooth patterns. Single cut files have 1 row of teeth for light cutting pressure and fine finishing. Double cut files have 2 rows of teeth that are better for heavier pressure and more material removal. And lastly, rasps and curved teeth files are best for rapid material removal on softer materials like wood, sheet metal, or plastics. Files also have different grades of coarseness. For one, larger files are typically more coarse than smaller files, as you can see here. In American pattern files, from smoothest to coarsest, you have smooth cut, second cut, and bastard cut. And yeah, it's really called a bastard cut file. I'm not cussing at you. Look up why they're called that. It's pretty interesting. Swiss pattern files have a different way of grading coarseness, starting at double aught at the coarsest, up to grade 6 for the finest. Europeans, am I right? Another thing to note about files are safe edges. These are edges that don't have any cutting teeth on them, so you can use them right up against the shoulder or the wall of a part and not do any damage to it, such as this needle file here. If you're ever in a pinch, you can also take a regular file and turn it into a safe edge file just by grinding off the teeth on the side of the file. All right, so as far as filing technique, there's really just a couple things that you need to know. The most important is most files are not made to be used back and forth. You really only want to apply pressure on the forward stroke, like so, and then remove the file from the part before you set up for another hit with the file. If you're doing something with a fine file and a small part, you can just run it back and forth and just remove any pressure from the file on the return stroke, like so. But just don't put any pressure on the return. That's just, like I say, most files are not made to be used in that manner. And then as far as actually deburring an edge, a lot of times what I'll do if I have a large burr like this sort of folded edge from the sawing operation, I'll just take my file and run it sort of steep to this face that the raised edge is on, And a lot of times, as you can see right there, it just peels it right off. Then you can come back and do what I normally do, which is file roughly a 45-degree angle, give it a few licks that way, and then come in a little bit shallow, maybe 15-20 degrees from this face, and then your 45, and then 15 or 20 degrees from this face. And that gives you a slightly rounded edge, which really is a better way to deburr a part. It feels better to the hands, and it's just more of a broken edge than simply filing a roughly 45-degree angle. That's typically, if you're deburring a square edge like this, then that's really what I recommend as far as breaking an edge. Now, if you have an angled face that's less than 90, of course, or more than 90, either way, of course you can modify your filing method that way. At the end of the day, your fingers will tell you what needs to be done on a sharp edge. All right, folks, now we're over here at the 1937 South Bend lathe to show you a few little tips for filing on a lathe. One of the main things is you kind of want to file left-handed. So I've got my left hand on the handle. I can support this end of the file with my right hand. And what that does is that keeps my hands and my arms away from the chuck. You don't want that. If I were to file like so, my hand's over the chuck. That's not safe. So you want to file like so. As far as other safety considerations are concerned, you want to make sure that you don't have anything loose on your arms. You don't have any long sleeves. If you do, roll them up. And make sure you're not wearing gloves. You don't want anything that can get caught on your part or on your chuck jaws. Now, as far as the actual filing technique, we'll start out just by putting about a 45-degree angle on this part. Just smooth, even pressure. You don't really want to bear down on the file and ruin the teeth on the file. Once you have a little bit of a bevel, then you can come back, just like we did on the flat bar. You can come back with a more shallow angle like so, and then a shallow angle from this direction. And that gives you a nice, soft, rounded edge. A couple other things to consider is, more often than not, you're probably going to want to run your machine into lower RPM. After all, essentially this is a tool steel tool here, not that fancy carbide stuff. So we're not going to be running it at 200 or 300 feet per minute. So a lot of times you might want to slow down your RPM before you begin filing. One last filing tip for you, it's kind of an old-timey tip. You can use chalk to sort of coat your file if you're having issues with filings getting stuck in the teeth. So I've just got a piece of chalk here. What it essentially does is it kind of fills up the teeth, but it doesn't keep the cutting edges from contacting your workpiece. So the valleys in your file can't really fill up that way. So any filings will just get discarded as you run it across the piece. I've used that quite a bit on softer materials like aluminum, copper, brass, that kind of thing, where they get stuck in the file teeth, and then after a few swipes, you're really not doing anything at that point. So
the way I like to deburr stuff, because I'm a lathe guy, my personal favorite, don't deburr at all and get a customer rejection. I'm just kidding. I like to do my deburring right on the machine if I can. For example, say we're cutting an OD thread. We turn it, we thread it. If I got a little bit of a burr at the front or the back of the thread, I'm going to go back in with a tool. I'm going to deburr it. Then I'm going to come back and run a cleanup pass or a spring press with my threading tool. Similarly, say I have a live tool in X that I'm drilling through to a through bore. Sometimes you leave a little flag inside the bore. Instead of doing it by hand, I'm going to come back with the bore, rebore it. Then I'm going to come back with a cross drill, recross drill it. So you're kind of knocking that burr back and forth till it pops off. Everyone has to do some deburring by hand, unless you're like some magical machining genius, which I'm sure exists. Not me, though. So when you have to do deburring by hand, I like to use a sharp deburring tool. Almost like a knife. Sharp, thin knife, and I sharpen them as we need them. And also Scotch-Brite, 3M pads, any type of sanding pad.
kind of the easiest thing. You know, we'll use a file when suitable, especially on aluminum parts where it's easy to take a lot of material off quickly. But then we'll also use a little hand grinder. We've got one of these battery operated ones where we can either put a sanding disc on it, or we'll actually put a Scotch-Brite pad on, which will also remove less material, depending what kind of finish we're looking for as well. Here's some examples of some of the parts where we've done, and we'll just, you can see here, we'll just take around that battery operated grinder, and we'll just go around the corners. This is a piece of hardened steel that's been wire cut. This is another piece here that we've wire cut all the way around, and we just put a light chamfer on it. Again, using that hand grinder, that makes it a lot easier. Now, some of the other things we'll use is our CNC machine, actually. One final way we'll deburr is that we'll actually put a chamfer on the blocks when we're on the CNC mill. Now, of course, this looks really great because you got nice uniform chamfers all over the place. It looks very professional, and this works great, especially when the customer specifies it. It is a little bit more time consuming, not much though. One other trick we use is we'll actually sandblast it. What we do here is we'll take some really tiny parts that are very small. They're kind of too hard to hold in the sandblaster itself because they're so small and with the big gloves and everything. So what we do is we'll put them in a cup. Basically what we want to do, we'll just put them in the cup here and hold our hand over it and blow it down along the side of the cup. And the parts will start blowing around in a circle. Give it a quick blast. Dump them out. Get rid of the sand and you can put them back in your cup. See how they're doing. And then do it again. Except don't drop the cup. We find this works really effectively on the tiny parts and also on some really small aluminum parts. Clean it out, and there you go.
There you have it, my friends. Hopefully you picked up a few good bits of information that will help make sure no one loses a finger next time they pick up one of your parts. Hey, if you learned something new or just enjoyed this new series, give us a like. Comment down below if you've got any of your own tips and tricks, and we might just cover one of them in the next episode. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, guys. Be safe in the machine shop and keep those spindles turning.